Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it, then let's evaluate together. The air in Soul Food Haven was thick with the smell of fried chicken, cornbread, and something sweeter. Maybe Mama Ruth's peach cobbler cooling on the back counter. Neon lights buzzed above the Englewood diner, casting a warm glow over chipped formica tables and vinyl booths that had seen better days. Outside, Chicago's South Side hummed with life. Car horns blared, kids laughed on the sidewalk, and a faint saxophone riff drifted from a nearby jazz club. Inside, though, it was a different kind of music. Plates clattering, forks scraping, and the low murmur of regulars swapping stories over collard greens. Nia Carter tied her apron with a quick, practiced knot, her braids swinging as she moved behind the counter. At 30, she had the kind of presence that filled a room without trying. Sharp eyes, a quick smile, and a scar that curved like a silver crescent from her left temple to her cheekbone. It caught the light sometimes, shimmering under the diner's fluorescence, a permanent reminder of the night she'd pulled her little brother Jaden from a burning bus when she was just 12. The world called it a flaw. Nia called it survival. Friday nights were always chaos at Soul Food Haven, and tonight was no exception. The place was packed. Families, couples, and a rowdy group of young businessmen in tailored suits who'd wandered in from the Loop, probably chasing a taste of authentic Chicago. Nia balanced a tray of sweet tea and catfish plates, weaving through the crowd with the grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. She didn't notice the stares. Or maybe she did. After years of catching sidelong glances at her scar, she'd learned to let them slide off her like grease on a hot skillet. At booth 6, the suits were loud, their laughter sharp and careless. One of them, a guy with slicked back hair and a Rolex that screamed new money, leaned toward his buddy as Nia approached with their order. "Yo, check it," he muttered loud enough to carry. She must have got that scar frying chicken too close to the pan. His friend snorted, nearly choking on his beer. "Nah, man, looks like she lost a fight with a lawnmower." Nia's hands tightened on the tray, but her face didn't flinch. She set the plates down, golden fried chicken, mac and cheese steaming, a slice of cornbread crumbling just right. The table went quiet for a split second, like they were waiting for her to crack. Instead, she straightened, locked eyes with Rolex guy, and said, "Y'all keep talking about my face, but you're still gonna clean these plates. Bet my chicken's prettier than your manners." The diner erupted. A couple of regulars at the counter whooped, and Mama Ruth, wiping down the register, let out a cackle that could wake the dead. "That's my girl!" she hollered. Rolex guy blinked, caught off guard, then tried to laugh it off, but his buddies were already digging into their food, too hungry to keep up the act. Nia turned on her heel, her heart pounding, and headed back to the kitchen. She could feel every eye in the room on her, but she kept her chin up, scar and all. Behind the counter, Keisha, Nia's best friend and Englewood's finest hairstylist, was leaning against the wall, braiding a customer's hair in the corner booth like it was her personal salon. "Girl, you just served that fool his own ego on a plate," Keisha said, grinning. "Real talk, you gotta teach me how to stay that cool." Nia grabbed a coffee pot, her hands still shaky from the adrenaline. "Cool? Keisha, I was 2 seconds from dumping this coffee on his head." "Then why didn't you?" Keisha's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Would have been the highlight of my week. 'Cause Mama Ruth would have had my head instead." Nia shot back, pouring a refill for a regular. She glanced at Mama Ruth, who was now scolding a busboy for dropping a spoon. At 62, Ruth was a force of nature, short, stout, with a voice that could cut through a thunderstorm. She ran Soul Food Haven like a drill sergeant, but she loved her staff like family, especially Nia. The night rolled on, orders piling up, the sizzle of the grill a constant rhythm. Nia moved through it all, her mind half on the customers, half on the bills stacking up at home. Jaden's college tuition was due, and her savings were thinner than the diner's napkins. She'd been dreaming of opening her own soul food joint for years. Nothing fancy, just a place where people could eat, laugh, and feel like they belonged. But dreams didn't pay the light bill, and Englewood wasn't exactly handing out miracles. In the corner booth, away from the chaos, a man sat alone, unnoticed by the crowd. Evan Brooks didn't look like he belonged here. His dark blazer was too sharp for the diner's worn-out vibe, but he'd ditched the tie, and his shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, like he was trying to blend in. A leather-bound notebook sat next to his half-eaten plate of smothered pork chops, and he was reading a dog-eared copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God. Every now and then he'd glance up, his eyes following Nia as she worked. Evan wasn't a regular, but he'd been coming in for a couple of weeks, always during the evening rush, always sitting in Nia's section. She'd noticed him. Hard not to, with that quiet intensity and the way he tipped like he was printing money. Tonight he'd seen the whole exchange with the suits, and unlike the other customers who'd looked away or laughed, he didn't flinch. He just watched, his jaw tight, like he was holding back something he wanted to say. Nia brought his check over, sliding it across the table with a practiced smile. "Anything else for you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the night's chaos. Evan looked up, his eyes a calm gray that seemed to see right through her. "Nah, I'm good," he said, his voice low, almost drowned out by the diner's noise. "But you handled those guys better than they deserved." Nia raised an eyebrow, caught off guard. "You saw that, huh?" "Hard to miss," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Most people would have lost it. You didn't even blink." She shrugged, wiping her hands on her apron. "Blinking's overrated. Besides, I got bills to pay, not fights to start." He chuckled, a sound that felt warmer than the diner's lights. "Fair enough. Still, that was some serious grace under pressure." Nia didn't know what to say to that. Grace? She felt more like a pressure cooker ready to blow. She nodded, about to walk away, when Evan slid a $50 bill under the check for a $10 meal. Her eyes narrowed. "You know the food's good, but it ain't that good," she said, pushing the bill back toward him. "It's not about the food," he said, standing to leave. "It's about the service." He grabbed his book and headed for the door, leaving the money on the table. Nia stared at the bill, her stomach twisting. Was this pity? Charity? She wasn't some sob story for a rich guy to feel good about. She scooped up the 50 and stormed after him, catching him just outside the diner. The Chicago wind whipped through her braids, and the streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement. "Hey!" she called, holding out the bill. "I don't need your handouts, all right? Take this back." Evan turned, his hands in his pockets, unfazed. "It's not a handout, Nia," he said, his voice steady. "It's a tip. You earned it." She blinked, surprised he knew her name, then remembered her name tag. "Earned it? For pouring coffee and dodging idiots? Come on, man, what's your deal?" He stepped closer, just enough for her to catch the faint scent of his cologne, something clean, like cedar. "My deal. I come here because this place feels real. The food, the people, you. Most folks would have snapped at those guys or walked out. You didn't. That's worth more than $50. Nia's throat tightened. No one had ever called her work real before, not like that. She wanted to argue, to shove the money back at him, but something in his eyes stopped her. They weren't pitying or condescending, just present, like he saw her, scar and all, and didn't look away. "Keep it," he said, turning to go. "Or give it to someone who needs it. Your call." He walked off into the night, his figure blending into the Englewood crowd. Nia stood there, the bill crumpled in her hand, her heart racing. She didn't know who this guy was, but he'd just turned her whole night upside down. Back inside, the diner was starting to empty out. Keisha was cashing out her last customer, her braids bouncing as she laughed at something the guy said. "Yo, Nia, you good?" she called, spotting her friend's expression. "You look like you just saw a ghost." "Not a ghost," Nia muttered, slipping the 50 into her apron pocket. "Just some dude who tips like he's Oprah." Keisha's eyes lit up. "Hold up, Mr. Fancy Blazer. Girl, you better lock that down. He's got main character energy written all over him." Nia rolled her eyes, grabbing a rag to wipe down the counter. "Keisha, I ain't locking down nobody. I got enough problems without adding a mystery man to the list." "Problems like what?" Keisha shot back, leaning on the counter. "Jaden's tuition? That raggedy apartment? Your fine self deserves a break, Nia. Let a man treat you right for once." Nia snorted, but her mind was still on Evan's words. Real. She glanced at her reflection in the stainless steel coffee urn, the scar catching the light. For a second, she didn't see the mark of that awful night. The smoke, the shattered glass, Jaden's screams. She saw something else, something she couldn't quite name. Mama Ruth shuffled over, her apron stained with flour. "Nia, you done daydreaming? I ain't paying you to stare at yourself." "Yes, ma'am," Nia said, snapping back to reality. She started stacking cups, but her thoughts kept drifting to the guy in the corner booth. Who was he? And why did he look at her like she was more than a waitress with a scar? As she locked up the diner, the neon sign flickering off, Nia found something tucked under a plate at Evan's booth, a small piece of paper folded neatly. She opened it, her breath catching. In clean, slanted handwriting, it read, "You're stronger than you think, Nia." She stared at the note, the Chicago wind rattling the diner's windows. Part of her wanted to crumple it, to dismiss it as some rich guy's attempt to play hero. But another part, the part that hadn't felt seen in years, wanted to believe it. She slipped the note into her pocket, next to the 50, and stepped out into the night, the weight of the day settling on her shoulders. Who was this Evan Brooks? And why did his words feel like a spark in a life that had been dark for too long? Hey, y'all. If Nia's firing heart got you hooked, you're gonna love where this story goes. Hit that subscribe button for soul-stirring stories and drop a comment. Tell us about a time you stood up like Nia or met someone who saw the real you. Let's keep the vibes going and dive deeper into her journey together. The Monday after Nia's showdown with the suits, Soul Food Haven was quieter, the kind of quiet that felt like the calm before a Chicago storm. The neon sign buzzed faintly, and the smell of Mama Ruth's collard greens simmering on the stove mixed with the sharp tang of coffee brewing behind the counter. Outside, Englewood's streets were alive with the usual rhythm. Kids on bikes, a street vendor hawking tamales, and the distant wail of a siren cutting through the evening air. Inside, though, the diner was a pocket of warmth, its worn booths and scratched tables holding stories older than Nia herself. Nia wiped down the counter, her braids tucked under a bandana, the scar on her cheek catching the light as she moved. She hadn't stopped thinking about Evan Brooks since Friday night. That $50 tip, that note. "You're stronger than you think, Nia," had burrowed under her skin like a splinter she couldn't pull out. Part of her wanted to toss it off as some rich guy's ego trip. But another part, the part that hadn't felt seen in years, kept replaying his words. Real. What did he know about real? And why did he keep coming back to a diner that was more grease than glamour? The bell above the door jingled, and there he was, right on cue. Evan slid into his usual corner booth, his dark blazer swapped for a simple gray hoodie, like he was trying to tone down whatever money vibe he gave off. He had that book again. Their eyes were watching God, and a leather notebook that looked like it held secrets. Nia caught his eye as she grabbed a coffee pot, and he gave her a small nod, the kind that felt more like an invitation than a greeting. "Yo, Mr. Fancy's back," Keisha whispered, sidling up to Nia with a grin. She was in her usual spot by the counter, braiding a regular's hair, her fingers moving like they had a mind of their own. You gonna talk to him or just stare like he's a museum exhibit? Keisha, I ain't staring, Nia said, rolling her eyes. And I'm definitely not playing your little rom-com game. Man's probably just here for the cornbread. Cornbread, my ass, Keisha shot back, her voice low but teasing. He's here for you, girl. Bet he's writing poetry about that scar in that fancy notebook of his. Nia snorted, but her cheeks warmed as she headed to Evan's booth. She poured his coffee without asking. He always ordered black, no sugar, and set the pot down. You know, we got other booths, she said, one hand on her hip. You don't gotta claim this one like it's your office. Evan looked up, his gray eyes crinkling at the corners. What can I say? This one's got the best view. He nodded toward the window, where the Englewood sunset painted the sky in streaks of orange and purple. But the way his gaze lingered on her said the view wasn't just outside. Nia raised an eyebrow, fighting a smile. Smooth, but I ain't falling for it. You want the usual? Pork chops, mashed potatoes, extra gravy? You know me too well, he said, leaning back in the booth. But let's mix it up. What's the spiciest thing on the menu? She smirked. You sure about that? Mama Ruth's hot chicken'll have you crying for your mama. Bring it on, he said, his grin daring her. I can handle it. Famous last words, Nia muttered, scribbling the order. As she turned to go, he called after her. Hey, Nia, that tip the other night, it wasn't pity, just so you know. She paused, her back to him, the note in her apron pocket feeling heavier than it should. Yeah, well, I kept it, she said over her shoulder, but don't think it's a free pass to keep playing hero. He chuckled, and the sound followed her all the way to the kitchen. The hot chicken came out sizzling, a pile of golden cayenne-crusted glory next to a scoop of coleslaw and a wedge of cornbread. Nia set it in front of Evan, leaning against the booth with a smirk. All right, big shot. Let's see what you got. Evan took a bite, chewed slowly, and then his eyes widened. His face turned red, and he grabbed his water glass, chugging it like his life depended on it. The diner's regulars noticed, and a few let out low chuckles. Nia threw her head back and laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. Told you. You ain't ready for Ruth's heat. Jesus, Evan gasped, wiping his mouth with a napkin. That's not food, that's a weapon. Welcome to Chicago, Nia said, still grinning. You want some milk to save your soul? He shook his head, laughing through the pain. Nah, I'm good. Gotta earn my stripes, right? For a moment, the diner faded. The clatter of plates, the hum of conversation, the weight of Nia's bills. It was just her and Evan, sharing a laugh that felt like a bridge between their worlds. She didn't know much about him, but she knew he wasn't like the suits from Friday. He didn't look at her scar like it was a defect. He looked at it like it was part of the story. Their moment was interrupted by the bell jingling again. Trey Washington strode in, all easy confidence and community swagger. At 32, Trey was a fixture in Englewood, a local activist who ran a youth program and had a smile that could charm the paint off a wall. He was tall, with a fade haircut and a Black Lives Matter pin on his jacket, and he always tipped Nia with a wink and a "keep shining, sis." Yo, Nia, Trey called, sliding into a stool at the counter. You got any of that peach cobbler left, or am I too late? For you? I might sneak a slice, Nia said, her tone playful but professional. She caught Evan's glance from the corner booth, his expression unreadable, and felt a flicker of something. Guilt? Curiosity? She shook it off and headed to the kitchen. Keisha, never one to miss a beat, leaned over as Nia passed. Oh, we got drama now, she whispered, her eyes darting between Evan and Trey. Mr. Fancy versus Mr. Community. Who you picking, girl? Nobody, Nia hissed, grabbing a plate of cobbler. I ain't got time for your soap opera nonsense. But as she served Trey, chatting about his latest fundraiser in Bronzeville, she couldn't help but feel Evan's eyes on her. Trey was easy to talk to, familiar, rooted in the same world she was. He knew what it meant to grow up in Englewood, to fight for every scrap of respect. Evan, though, he was a question mark, and Nia wasn't sure she wanted the answer. The night took a turn when Jaden burst through the door, his hoodie splattered with paint and his eyes wild. At 22, Nia's little brother was all lanky energy and bad decisions, a college kid with a talent for graffiti that kept landing him in trouble. "Nia," he said, voice low, "we gotta talk." "Not now, Jaden," she said, glancing at the customers. "I'm working." "It's serious," he insisted, grabbing her arm. "Cops caught me tagging a wall by the L tracks. They let me go, but I need cash for the fine. Like yesterday." Nia's stomach dropped. "How much?" "500, he muttered, avoiding her eyes. 500? She hissed, pulling him toward the back. "Jaden, you think I'm printing money out here? I'm already drowning with your tuition." I know, he said, running a hand over his braids. "But if I don't pay, they'll book me, Nia. Please." She closed her eyes, the weight of it all. Bills, dreams, her brother's reckless choices, pressing down like a vice. "Fine," she said finally. "But this is the last time, Jaden. You hear me?" He nodded, relief flooding his face. "Thanks, sis. You're the best." "Yeah, tell that to my bank account," she muttered, heading back to the counter. Her savings were already razor thin, and now this? She felt like she was running in place, every step sinking her deeper into the mud. As she poured another round of coffee, Mama Ruth sidled up, her apron dusted with flour. "What's that boy gotten himself into now?" she asked, her voice sharp but warm. "Same old Jaden," Nia said, forcing a smile. "Thinks he's the next Banksy, but the cops ain't impressed." Ruth shook her head. "You carry too much, Nia. That heart of yours gonna break one day." "Already cracked," Nia said, half joking, but the words stung more than she meant them to. The final blow came near closing time. Keisha, scrolling on her phone, let out a gasp and shoved it under Nia's nose. "Girl, you need to see this." Nia frowned, taking the phone. It was a gossip site, the kind that thrived on Chicago's drama, and there, splashed across the screen, was a blurry photo of her and Evan outside the diner Friday night. Her scar was front and center, lit by the streetlights, and Evan was handing her that damn 50. The headline screamed, "Scarred waitress snags Chicago millionaire, charity or romance." Nia's blood turned to ice. The article was vicious, calling her a hard luck case and hinting Evan was slumming it for clout. Comments piled up below, some curious, some cruel. "She's got to be desperate to think he's serious. Bet he's just feeling sorry for her." "Who the hell took this?" Nia whispered, her voice shaking. She looked up, catching Evan's eye across the diner. He was packing up, oblivious to the storm brewing on her phone. Keisha grabbed her arm. "Nia, don't do anything stupid. You don't know if he had anything to do with this." But Nia was already moving, her heart pounding as she marched to his booth. She slapped the phone down in front of him, the article glaring up like an accusation. "This your idea of a tip?" she snapped. "Put me on blast for the whole city to tear apart?" Evan's eyes widened as he scanned the screen. "Nia, I didn't—" he started, but she cut him off. "Don't," she said, her voice low and fierce. "You think I need this? People staring at my scar, calling me your charity case? I was fine before you walked in here, Evan. I don't need your money or your spotlight." He stood, his hands raised like he was trying to calm a storm. "Nia, listen. I didn't leak this. I don't know who did, but I swear I'd never do that to you." "Then why's it feel like you did?" She shot back, her throat tight. The diner was quiet now, every eye on them. Mama Ruth watched from the counter, her expression unreadable, and Keisha hovered nearby, ready to jump in. Evan took a step closer, his voice steady but urgent. I don't control the world out there, Nia. But I'm here, right now, telling you I see you. Not the scar, not the headlines, you. And I want to stand by you, if you'll let me. Nia's chest ached, torn between anger and the flicker of something softer. She wanted to believe him, but trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. I don't need you to stand by me, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been standing on my own my whole life. She turned and walked away, the phone still buzzing with notifications, Jaden's fine looming like a guillotine. Evan didn't follow her, but she felt his eyes on her back, heavy with something she couldn't name. Back at the counter, Keisha was waiting, her usual sass replaced with concern. You okay, fam? She asked, squeezing Nia's shoulder. No, Nia admitted, her voice cracking. But I will be. Keisha pulled her into a quick hug. That's my girl. But real talk? You can't run from a man like that forever. He's got your number, scar and all. Nia didn't answer. She grabbed a rag and started wiping down the counter, the motion automatic, grounding. Her pocket held Evan's note and the 50, both burning a hole through her. Jaden's trouble, the article, Evan's words, it was all too much. She needed to focus, to keep her head above water. But as she locked up the diner that night, the Chicago wind biting her cheeks, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting, whether she wanted it to or not. The rain came down in sheets, turning Chicago's Englewood streets into a maze of puddles and neon reflections. Inside Soul Food Haven, the air was warm, heavy with the scent of cornbread baking and the faint tang of Mama Ruth's hot sauce. The diner's radio played a soft jazz tune, barely audible over the clatter of plates and the low hum of conversation. It was a Wednesday, quieter than the weekend rush, but Nia Carter felt like she was carrying the weight of the whole South Side on her shoulders. Her scar itched under the diner's fluorescent lights, a silver crescent that seemed to pulse with every glance she caught in the coffee urn's reflection. Since that damn gossip article hit, Scarred waitress snags Chicago millionaire. Nia had been dodging whispers and stares everywhere she went. The Englewood Market, the bus stop, even the corner bodega. Folks looked at her like she was a headline, not a person. Worse, Jaden's $500 fine was still unpaid, eating into her savings like a slow bleed. She'd been avoiding Evan Brooks, too, ever since their blow-up last week. His note, "You're stronger than you think," sat crumpled in her nightstand drawer, a reminder of a moment she wasn't sure she trusted. Nia wiped down a booth, her braids swinging as she moved. Keisha was at the counter, braiding a kid's hair while scrolling through her phone, her usual sass dialed down. "Yo, Nia, you seen this?" she called, holding up a new post from the same gossip site. Another blurry photo, this time of Nia serving tray at the diner, with a caption, "Is she playing the field? Waitress caught between millionaire and local hero." Nia groaned, tossing her rag onto the counter. "Are you kidding me? What is this, a reality show? I'm just trying to pour coffee and pay bills, not star in Love and Hip Hop Chicago." Keisha laughed, but her eyes were soft. "Real talk, fam. You gotta let this go. People talk, always will. You're too dope to let some blog mess with your head." "Easy for you to say," Nia muttered, grabbing a tray of sweet tea for a table. "You ain't got your face plastered online like a wanted poster." As she served the tea, the bell jingled, and Trey Washington strode in, his BLM pin glinting on his jacket. He flashed that easy smile, the one that made half of Englewood swoon. "Nia, my favorite chef," he said, sliding into a stool. "Got any of that catfish today? I'm starving." "Only if you say, 'pretty please' first," Nia teased, her mood lifting. Trey was safe, familiar, a brotherly vibe with a hint of something more she wasn't ready to touch. She plated up some catfish and collards, sliding it across the counter. "You're lucky I like you, Trey. This is the last piece." "Lucky's my middle name," he said, winking. "Hey, you coming to the Bronzeville fundraiser this weekend? We're raising money for the youth center, and I could use a star like you there." Nia hesitated. Fundraisers meant crowds, and crowds meant more eyes on her scar, more whispers about that article. But Trey's program had helped Jaden stay out of trouble, mostly, and she owed him. "I'll think about it," she said, dodging his gaze. "Don't think too long," he said, leaning closer. "Englewood needs you, Nia. Not just your food, but you. The real you." Her throat tightened. Trey always knew how to hit her where it hurt, in the best way. She nodded, turning to refill the coffee pot when she caught a glimpse of Evan in his corner booth. He'd slipped in unnoticed, his gray hoodie blending into the shadows, that damn book open in front of him. His eyes flicked up, meeting hers, and for a second, the diner faded. Then she looked away, her heart thudding. Not today, Brooks. The night took a darker turn when Mama Ruth called Nia to the back. The old woman's face was grim, her apron twisted in her hands. "Nia, we gotta talk," she said, closing the kitchen door. "Some big shot sniffing around, saying he wants to buy this place. Says if I don't fire you, he'll make sure I can't pay the bills." Nia's stomach dropped. "Fire me? For what? That article?" Ruth shook her head. "Don't know, baby. But he's got money and pull. Name's Marcus Kane. Sound familiar?" Nia's mind raced. Kane. She'd heard the name before, some real estate shark who'd been gobbling up Southside properties. But why target her? "Ruth, you can't let him push you around. This place is your heart." "And you're mine," Ruth said, her voice fierce. "I ain't firing you. But things might get tight, Nia, real tight." Nia nodded, her jaw tight. She'd been through worse. Evictions, hospital bills, that night on the bus when the world caught fire. She'd survive this too. But as she left the kitchen, her hands shook and the diner felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. Evan was still there, nursing his coffee, his eyes following her as she worked. She ignored him, focusing on the orders, the clink of dishes, the rhythm that kept her grounded. But when she brought his check, he didn't let her walk away. "Nia," he said, his voice low. "Can we talk? About the article? About everything?" She crossed her arms, her guard up. "What's there to talk about? You said you didn't leak it. I heard you. Done." "It's not done," he said, leaning forward. "I know what it's like to have your life picked apart. I've been there, and I'm not walking away just because it's messy." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "Messy? Evan, my life's a damn tornado. You think you can just waltz in with your fancy words and fix it?" "I don't want to fix it," he said, his eyes steady. "I want to be in it. With you." Nia's breath caught, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed. It was Jaden, his voice frantic. "Nia, I'm in trouble. Cops got me again. Tagged a wall by the 63rd Street station. I need you." Her heart sank. "Jaden, are you serious? I don't have another 500 lying around." "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry, sis. I messed up." She hung up, her hands trembling. Evan was watching, his expression unreadable. "Everything okay?" he asked. "No," she snapped, grabbing her apron. "Nothing's okay. Stay out of it, Evan." She stormed out, leaving him with his coffee and her words hanging in the air. The next few days were a blur. Nia scraped together what she could to bail Jaden out, dipping into the savings she'd earmarked for her dream restaurant. She worked double shifts, dodging Keisha's questions and Trey's invitations. Evan kept coming to the diner, but she avoided his booth, serving him through other waitresses. His tips piled up, $20, $30, $50, each one a silent plea she wasn't ready to answer. Then came the Bronzeville fundraiser. Nia hadn't planned to go, but Keisha dragged her, saying, "You need a night out, girl, before you turn into a cornbread statue." The event was in a community center, its walls covered in murals of black icons, Malcolm X, Ida B. Wells, Chance the Rapper. Tables groaned under piles of soul food, fried catfish, candied yams, peach cobbler glistening like a sunset. The air buzzed with laughter, kids running between tables, and a live jazz band filling the room with sound. Nia set up a small booth serving her own recipe, crispy chicken wings with a honey-hot sauce she'd perfected over years. The crowd loved it, lining up for seconds, their compliments warming her in a way the diner never did. "Girl, this sauce is fire," a woman said, licking her fingers. "You need your own spot, Nia." For the first time in weeks, Nia felt like herself. Not the scarred waitress, not the headline, just Nia, doing what she loved. She was laughing, passing out plates, when Trey found her. "Told you you'd steal the show," he said, his smile soft. "You're a star, Nia Carter." She blushed, brushing off the compliment. "Just feeding folks, Trey. Same as always." "Nah," he said, stepping closer. "You're more than that. You're Englewood's heart, and mine, if you'd let me say it." Nia froze, her pulse racing. Trey's words were warm, grounded, like the South Side itself. But before she could respond, the crowd parted, and there was Evan standing by the door. He wasn't in his hoodie tonight, just a simple black shirt, his hands in his pockets, his eyes locked on her. The jazz band hit a high note, and the room seemed to tilt. "Nia!" a voice called. It was Keisha, waving her over. "We need more wings! Stat!" Saved by the bell, Nia thought, hurrying back to her booth. But as she served, she felt the weight of two gazes, Trey's, steady and familiar, and Evan's, quiet and searching. Then, out of nowhere, Evan stepped up to her booth, dropping a check into the donation jar, a big one, judging by the zeros Keisha's eyes caught as she peeked. "Show off," Nia muttered, but she couldn't hide her smile. "Not showing off," Evan said, grabbing a wing. "Just hungry, and maybe hoping you'll talk to me again." Trey appeared beside her, his vibe less friendly now. "Brooks, right?" he said, crossing his arms. "You're a long way from the loop. What's a guy like you doing at a Bronzeville fundraiser?" Evan didn't flinch. "Same as you, Washington, supporting the community, and maybe trying to make things right." Trey scoffed. "Right? You think throwing money around makes you one of us? Nia deserves someone who gets Englewood, not some rich boy playing hero." Nia's cheeks burned. "Trey, chill," she said, stepping between them. "I don't need anybody fighting over me like I'm a damn trophy. Evan's here, same as you. Let's keep it cool." The crowd was watching now, the jazz band's rhythm a tense backdrop. Trey backed off, muttering, "I'm just looking out for you, sis." Evan stayed quiet, but his eyes said he wasn't going anywhere. The fundraiser ended with a bang. Nia's wings sold out, and the youth center raised enough to stay open another year. As she cleaned up, Evan lingered, helping stack chairs without being asked. "You were amazing tonight," he said, his voice soft. "This is who you are, Nia. Not that article, not the diner. This." She looked at him, her guard slipping. "Why do you care so much, Evan? What's in it for you?" He hesitated, then said, "You remind me of what I've been missing. Something real. Something worth fighting for." Her heart thudded, but before she could answer, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your mail, waitress. You'll see who Brooks really is." Attached was a grainy photo of a document, a contract with Evan's signature, tied to a real estate deal that had displaced Englewood families years ago. Nia's blood ran cold. She looked at Evan, the check still in his hand, and felt the ground shift beneath her. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, shoving the phone at him. His face fell as he read it. "Nia, I can explain. Save it," she snapped, her voice shaking. "I trusted you, Evan. I thought you saw me. But this is my home you're tearing apart." She turned and walked away, the jazz fading behind her, the weight of betrayal heavier than any scar. The Chicago skyline glittered like a promise, but for Nia Carter, it felt like a lie. The rain had stopped, leaving the Englewood streets slick and shimmering under streetlights. Inside her cramped apartment, the air was stale, heavy with the weight of unpaid bills and a betrayal she couldn't shake. The text from that unknown number, "Check your mail, waitress," had led to a manila envelope stuffed with photocopies of a real estate contract. Evan Brooks's signature scrawled at the bottom, a deal that had turned Englewood families out of their homes 5 years ago, paving the way for condos nobody in the neighborhood could afford. Nia's scar burned under her fingertips as she traced it, staring at the papers spread across her kitchen table. How could she have trusted him? It had been a week since the Bronzeville fundraiser, since she'd walked away from Evan in the community center, the jazz band's notes fading behind her. She hadn't gone back to Soul Food Haven, not after Mama Ruth's warning about Marcus Kane's threat to buy the diner. Instead, she'd picked up shifts at a dive bar in West Loop, a grimy spot with sticky floors and customers who leered at her scar like it was a carnival exhibit. The tips were lousy, and the late hours left her bone-tired, but it was better than facing Evan's booth or the whispers about that damn gossip article. Her phone buzzed, Keisha's name lighting up the screen. Nia ignored it, same as she'd ignored Jaden's texts and Trey's voicemails. She didn't want their pity or their pep talks. All she wanted was to keep her head above water, to pay Jaden's fine and maybe, just maybe, hold on to the dream of her own soul food restaurant. But every step forward felt like sinking deeper into the mud. A knock at the door jolted her. She froze, her heart thudding. Another knock, then a voice, low and steady. "Nia, it's Evan. Please, open the door." She stood, her hands clenching. Part of her wanted to ignore him, to let him stand out there in the cold. But another part, the part that remembered his laugh over Mama Ruth's hot chicken, his eyes on her at the fundraiser, couldn't. She opened the door, her expression hard. "What do you want, Evan?" He looked different tonight, his usual hoodie replaced by a tailored jacket, his gray eyes shadowed with something heavy. "I need to explain," he said, his voice raw. "About the contract, about everything." "There's nothing to explain," she snapped, crossing her arms. "You signed off on a deal that screwed over my neighborhood, my home, and you thought you could just tip me $50 and make it all okay?" "It's not like that," he said, stepping closer. "Can I come in? 5 minutes, Nia. That's all I'm asking." She hesitated, then stepped aside, letting him into the tiny living room. The couch sagged under his weight as he sat, the contract still glaring from the table. "I was 25, he started, his hands clasped. "Fresh out of business school, working for my family's company. I signed hundreds of papers, Nia. I didn't know what that deal would do to Englewood. By the time I found out, it was done. I left the company because of it, because I couldn't live with being that guy." Nia's chest tightened, but her voice stayed cold. "You expect me to believe you didn't know? You with your fancy degrees and your corner booth? People like you always know." "I didn't," he said, his eyes pleading. "But I'm not saying I'm innocent. I should have asked questions. I should have cared more. I'm trying to make it right now, Nia. That's why I was at the fundraiser, why I'm here." She laughed, sharp and brittle. "Right. So you're what, my knight in shining armor? I don't need saving, Evan. I've been saving myself since I was 12. "I know," he said, standing, his voice softer now. "And that's why I can't walk away from you. You're not just surviving, Nia. You're burning bright, and I'm drawn to that fire." her breath caught. The room suddenly too small. She wanted to push him away, to hold on to her anger, but his words lit something inside her she'd buried long ago. Before she could stop herself, she stepped closer, her voice low. "You don't get to say that. Not after this." She jabbed a finger at the contract. "Then let me prove it," he said, his hand brushing her arm. "Come with me to a dinner tomorrow night. My family's hosting it downtown. I want you there, Nia. Not as a guest, but as you. Let me show you I'm not that guy." She pulled back, her heart racing. "Your family? The ones who probably think I'm some Southside charity case? No thanks." "They don't know you," he said, his jaw tight. "But I do, and I'm not ashamed of you, Nia, not for a second." The words hit her like a punch, and for a moment she saw it, standing beside him, scar and all, in a world that wasn't hers. But the contract, the article, Jaden's trouble, they were anchors pulling her back. "I'll think about it," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "But don't hold your breath." He nodded, leaving without another word, the door clicking shut behind him. Nia sank onto the couch, the contract staring up at her like a ghost. The next night, against every ounce of her better judgment, Nia found herself in a cab headed to the Loop. Keisha had practically forced her into a borrowed black dress, simple but elegant, her braids swept into a high bun. "You're walking into that lion's den like a queen," Keisha had said, smacking her with a hairbrush for good measure. Nia wasn't so sure. The dinner was at a rooftop venue, all glass and steel, with views of Lake Michigan that screamed money. She felt like an imposter the second she stepped out of the elevator. The room was a sea of suits and sequins, the air thick with perfume and privilege. Lillian Brooks, Evan's mother, stood at the center, a statuesque woman in her 60s with pearls that probably cost more than Nia's rent. Her smile was polished, but her eyes were cold as she spotted Nia. Evan was at her side, his face lighting up when he saw Nia. He crossed the room, taking her hand. "You came?" he said, his voice warm. "You look incredible." "Don't get used to it," Nia said, her tone dry but her heart racing. "I'm here to eat, not to play Cinderella." He laughed, guiding her through the crowd. But the mood shifted when Lillian approached, her smile tight. "You must be Nia," she said, her voice dripping with courtesy. "Evan's friend from the diner, yes?" Nia's jaw clenched, but she matched Lillian's tone. "That's me. Thanks for the invite, Mrs. Brooks. Nice view up here." "Oh, it's nothing," Lillian said, waving a hand. "Though I'm sure it's quite different from what you're used to. Evan, why don't you introduce Nia to the staff? She might feel more at home with them." The room went quiet, heads turning. Nia felt every eye on her scar, her dress, her existence. Evan's hand tightened on hers, but she didn't need his protection. She stepped forward, her voice clear. "I'm good right here, Mrs. Brooks. I don't need to be at home to know my worth. But I bet you'd remember me better if I was serving your wine, right?" A gasp rippled through the crowd, but Nia held Lillian's gaze, her scar glinting under the chandeliers. Evan's lips twitched, pride flashing in his eyes. Lillian's smile faltered, but she recovered, saying, "Charming. Enjoy the evening, Nia." As Lillian walked away, Evan leaned close, whispering, "You're my hero." "Don't push it," Nia muttered, but a smile tugged at her lips. For a moment, she felt invincible, like she could take on the whole damn Loop. But the night wasn't over. After dinner, as Nia stepped onto the balcony for air, her phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "Ask Brooks about Marcus Kane. He's not who you think." Her stomach twisted. She turned to find Evan, but before she could, a commotion broke out inside. Paparazzi somehow slipped past security, were snapping photos, their flashes blinding. "Nia! Over here!" one shouted, zooming in on her scar. "Is it true you're Brooke's new project?" Panic surged. Evan grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a side exit. "Come on," he said, his voice urgent. They ran down a service stairwell, the paparazzi shouts echoing behind them. Outside, the Chicago streets were a blur of lights and rain-slicked pavement. They ducked into an alley, but Nia tripped on a curb, her knee hitting the ground. Pain shot through her, and when she touched her face, her fingers came away bloody. Her scar had reopened, a thin cut slicing through it. "Nia, oh God," Evan said, kneeling beside her. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault." She pushed him away, tears stinging her eyes. "Your fault? Evan, I'm tired of being your headline. I can't do this. Your world, your mess. It's too much." "I'll fix it," he said, his voice breaking. "I'll protect you, Nia. I swear." "You can't," she whispered, standing shakily. "Nobody can." She walked away, the rain mixing with her tears, leaving Evan in the alley. Back at her apartment, she found another envelope in her mailbox, this one with a USB drive and a note. Brooks isn't the only one with secrets. Her hands trembled as she plugged it into her laptop. It was a recording, grainy but clear. Marcus Kane, in a sleek office, laughing. "Brooks thinks he can play savior with that waitress," he said. "But I'll bury them both. She's just collateral." Nia's blood ran cold. This wasn't just about Evan's past. It was a war, and she was caught in the crossfire. The next day, she went to the dive bar, her scar bandaged, her heart heavy. A customer grabbed her wrist, slurring, "Hey, you're that girl from the news. How much for a private show?" She yanked free, her voice shaking. "Touch me again, and you'll be eating through a straw." But inside, she was crumbling. That night, she went to Evan's apartment, the USB burning a hole in her pocket. She needed answers now. He opened the door, his face pale. "Nia, I've been calling." "Shut up," she said, shoving the USB at him. "What's this? Who's Marcus Kane, and why's he coming for me?" Evan's eyes widened as he listened to the recording. "Kane's my old business partner," he said, his voice tight. "He's been trying to ruin me since I left the company." "Nia, I didn't know he was targeting you." "You didn't know?" she shouted, tears spilling. "Evan, my life's falling apart because of you. My job, my home, my face. Everywhere I go, I'm a target. And you didn't know?" He stepped closer, his hands reaching for her. "Nia, I'm sorry. I never meant—" "Don't," she said, but her voice broke. The fight drained out of her, and when he pulled her into his arms, she didn't resist. His lips found hers, a kiss that was all fire and desperation, like they were drowning, and this was their last breath. She kissed him back, hard, her hands gripping his shirt as they stumbled to the couch. His fingers traced her scar, gentle but urgent, her dress slipping off one shoulder. "Nia," he whispered, his breath hot against her skin. "I need you." "Don't stop," she said, her voice raw. The world fell away. The diner, the article, Kane's voice on that USB. It was just them. Bodies tangled, hearts racing. But when his phone rang, Lillian's name flashing on the screen, reality crashed back. Nia pulled away, laughing bitterly as she fixed her dress. "Perfect timing. Your mom's probably here to arrest me for stealing her son." "Nia, wait," Evan said, but she was already standing, her hands shaking. "No," she said, grabbing the USB. "I'm done, Evan. I can't keep paying for your world." She left, the door slamming behind her, unaware that Lillian was waiting downstairs, her eyes cold and calculating. The next morning, a new envelope arrived at Nia's apartment, this time from Lillian herself. "Leave my son, or I'll make sure your past buries you." Attached was a court document from the bus accident, threatening to reopen a lawsuit that could ruin Nia's life. Nia sank to the floor, the papers slipping from her hands. She'd fought so hard to keep standing, but now, with Kane's schemes and Lillian's threats closing in, she felt like she was back in that burning bus, the flames licking closer than ever. The Chicago dawn was gray, the kind of gray that seeped into your bones and made you forget what warmth felt like. Nia Carter sat on the floor of her Englewood apartment, the court document from Lillian Brooks crumpled beside her. "Leave my son, or I'll make sure your past buries you." The words burned worse than her scar ever had, a silver crescent that throbbed under the bandage from last night's chaos. The USB drive with Marcus Kane's recording lay nearby, its threat still echoing. "I'll bury them both." Nia's world was unraveling, her job at Soul Food Haven hanging by a thread, Jaden's fines draining her savings, and Evan Brooks, the man she'd almost let in, caught in a web of secrets she didn't know how to untangle. She hadn't slept. The memory of Evan's apartment, their kiss, his hands on her skin, the way she'd wanted to stay, clashed with the betrayal she felt. His signature on that gentrification deal, Lillian's icy threat, Kane's sinister laugh. It was too much. She'd spent her life fighting, from that burning bus at 12 to every leering customer at the dive bar. But now she felt like she was losing ground. Her dream of opening a soul food restaurant, fire and flavor, seemed further away than ever. Her phone buzzed, Keisha's name flashing. Nia ignored it, same as she'd ignored the 10 other calls from her best friend. She couldn't face Keisha's optimism, not when she was drowning. But when the phone buzzed again, it was Jaden, and his voice was different, calm, almost reverent. "Nia, check your texts. I sent you something. You need to see it." She sighed, opening the message. It was a video file, labeled "For Sis." Her heart thudded as she hit play. The screen flickered, and there it was, grainy footage from a security camera, dated 12 years ago. A school bus, flipped on its side, smoke curling from the wreckage. A crowd gathered, shouting, but one figure stood out. A 12-year-old Nia, her face unscarred, crawling through a shattered window. She was screaming, "Jaden! Jaden! I'm coming!" Glass cut her cheek as she pulled her little brother from the flames, his small body limp in her arms. The video ended with her collapsing, blood streaming down her face, Jaden safe beside her. Nia's breath hitched, tears spilling before she could stop them. She hadn't seen that day since it happened, hadn't let herself remember the pain, the fear, the way she'd kept going anyway. Jaden's text followed. "Found this in Dad's old stuff. You're my hero, sis. Always were. Scar or no scar." She played the video again, then again, each frame stitching something back together inside her. That girl on the screen wasn't a victim. She was a fighter, a fire that refused to go out. And if she could save Jaden then, she could save herself now. Lillian, Kane, the gossip rags, they didn't get to define her. She did. Nia stood, wiping her face. The court document, the USB, the bills, they were still there. But they weren't her story. Not anymore. She grabbed her phone and called Keisha. "Yo, you free?" she asked, her voice steadier than it had been in weeks. "Girl, I've been blowing up your phone," Keisha said, half laughing, half scolding. "You okay?" "I was about to roll up with a search party." "I'm not okay," Nia admitted, "but I'm getting there. Meet me at Soul Food Haven. I got an idea." An hour later, Nia was back in the diner's kitchen, the smell of frying catfish and baking cornbread wrapping around her like a hug. Mama Ruth was at the stove, stirring a pot of collard greens, her apron dusted with flour. "You look like hell, baby," she said, not looking up. "But you're here, so I ain't complaining." Nia managed to smile. Ruth, I need a favor. A big one. I want to throw a cookout, here, in the lot out back. For Englewood, for Jaden's fine, for me. Can we do it? Ruth turned, her eyes sharp but warm. A cookout? With Cain breathing down my neck? You got some nerve, Nia Carter. I got more than nerve, Nia said, her voice firm. I got heart, and I'm done letting people like him run my life. Ruth studied her, then nodded. All right, baby, but you're washing every damn dish after. Nia laughed, the sound lighter than she'd felt in weeks. Deal. The next few days were a whirlwind. Nia and Keisha rallied the neighborhood, spreading the word through group chats, church bulletins, and Trey's youth center. Jaden helped, painting flyers with his graffiti flair, his usual cockiness replaced with a quiet gratitude. I'm sorry, sis, he said one night, taping a flyer to a lamppost. For the fines, for stressing you out. I didn't know how much you were carrying. Nia nudged his shoulder. You're my brother, Jaden. I'd carry the world for you. But maybe stop tagging train stations, yeah? He grinned, and for a moment, they were kids again. Before the bus, before the scar. Trey pitched in too, bringing his community connections and that easy smile that still made Nia's stomach flip. You're doing something big, Nia, he said, hauling a grill to the diner's back lot. This ain't just a cookout, it's a statement. She nodded, but her thoughts kept drifting to Evan. He hadn't shown up at the diner since their fight, and part of her was glad. Another part missed his quiet presence, the way he'd looked at her like she was more than her scar. She pushed it down, focusing on the cookout. This was her fight now, not his. The day of the cookout dawned bright, the Chicago sun cutting through the autumn chill. The diner's back lot transformed into a festival. Tables groaned under platters of Nia's honey-hot wings, catfish nuggets and peach cobbler, their steam rising in the crisp air. A local DJ spun old-school hip-hop, and kids ran between folding chairs, laughing as balloons bobbed overhead. Englewood showed up in force. Families, elders, even a few cops who'd known Nia since she was a kid. The murals on the diner's walls seemed to glow, their colors a testament to the neighborhood's resilience. Nia worked the grill, her bandana tied tight, her scar unhidden for the first time in years. She didn't flinch when people looked, didn't shrink from their smiles or their questions. She served plates, swapped stories, and laughed with Keisha, who was dancing with a plate of ribs in hand. "Girl, you outdid yourself," Keisha shouted over the music. "This food's so good I might propose to you myself." "Get in line," Nia shot back, flipping a burger. But her laughter faded when she saw him, Evan standing at the edge of the lot, hands in his pockets, his gray eyes locked on her. He wasn't in his usual hoodie, just a simple jacket and jeans, blending in better than she'd expected. Her heart thudded, but she turned back to the grill, focusing on the sizzle of meat. Trey noticed him too, his jaw tightening. "What's he doing here?" he muttered, sidling up to Nia. "Thought you were done with that guy." "I am," Nia said, but the words felt hollow. She handed Trey a plate. "Go eat. I got this." The cookout was a hit, raising enough to cover Jaden's fine, and then some. Nia took the mic near the end, her hands shaky, but her voice clear. "Y'all, thank you for showing up," she said, the crowd quieting. "This ain't just about food or money. It's about us, Englewood, our stories, our fight. I used to think this scar made me less, but it's proof I'm still here, still burning. And so are we all." The crowd erupted, clapping and cheering, their voices a wave that lifted her higher than she'd ever felt. Keisha whooped, Jaden grinned, and even Mama Ruth wiped a tear from her eye. Nia stepped down, her heart full, only to find Evan waiting. "You meant every word," he said, his voice soft but sure. "You're incredible, Nia." She crossed her arms, her guard up. What do you want, Evan? Another chance to explain? No, he said, pulling a small package from his pocket. I want to give you this. It was a notebook, leather-bound like the one he always carried, but older, its pages yellowed. My mom's recipes, he said. The ones she made when I was a kid. I know you're going to open that restaurant someday, Nia. I just want you to have a piece of what kept me going. Her throat tightened. She took the notebook, her fingers brushing his, but before she could speak, Trey stepped between them. Brooks, you don't belong here, he said, his voice low. Nia's Englewood. You're just passing through. Evan didn't back down. Maybe, but I'm here now and I'm not leaving unless she tells me to. Nia's head spun. She wanted to scream, to choose, but the weight of the cookout, the video, the threats, it was too much. Both of you, stop, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. This is my night, my fight. I don't need either of you to save me. Trey nodded, stepping back, but Evan lingered, his eyes searching hers. I'm sorry, Nia, he said. For the deal, for the mess. I've been digging into Kane. He's behind the articles, the threats to Ruth. I'm going to stop him, I swear. She wanted to believe him, but trust was a fragile thing. Prove it, she said, clutching the notebook. But don't do it for me. Do it for Englewood. He nodded, leaving without another word. Nia watched him go, the crowd's laughter fading into the background. She opened the notebook, finding a recipe for peach pie in careful handwriting. A note scrawled in the margin. For the days you need to feel home. Her eyes stung, but she didn't cry. Not yet. The next morning, Nia was back at the dive bar, her apron stained with beer, her scar still bandaged. A customer leered, slurring. You're that waitress, right? The one with the rich boyfriend? She ignored him, but the words cut deep. She was wiping down the counter when her phone buzzed. A news alert. Chicago tycoon Marcus Kane under investigation for fraud. The article mentioned Evan's company, hinting he'd tipped off the feds. Nia's heart raced. Had Evan done this? For her? For Englewood? She didn't know, but the spark from Jaden's video, from the cookout, was growing into a flame. She quit the bar that night, walking out into the Chicago rain, her mind racing. Fire and Flavor wasn't just a dream anymore, it was a plan. But as she reached her apartment, another envelope waited in her mailbox, this one unmarked. Inside was a single photo of her at the cookout, smiling, her scar unhidden. On the back, in sharp black ink, You're stronger than you think. Keep burning. E. Nia's breath caught. She didn't know if Evan was her future or her past, but she knew one thing. She was done hiding. The fire that forged her was still alive, and it was time to let it blaze. The Chicago winter was creeping in, the kind of cold that bit through your jacket and settled in your bones. But inside Fire and Flavor, Nia Carter's new soul food restaurant, the air was warm, alive with the scent of fried catfish, candied yams, and peach cobbler fresh from the oven. The Englewood storefront was small, its brick walls painted with murals by Jaden, vibrant swirls of red, gold, and black, telling stories of the South Side's heart. A hand-painted sign hung above the door, Fire and Flavor, where every story burns bright. Below it in smaller letters, for the fighters, the dreamers, the scarred. Nia tied her apron, her braids loose over her shoulders, her scar unhidden under the soft glow of string lights. It had been 3 months since the cookout that changed everything, since Jaden's video reminded her who she was, since Evan Brooks handed her his mother's recipe notebook, since she'd walked away from the dive bar and decided to stop running. The money from the cookout had covered Jaden's fine, and with Keisha's hustle, Trey's community connections, and a small loan from Mama Ruth, Nia had turned her dream into reality. Fire and flavor was hers, scar and all. Tonight was the grand opening, and Englewood was showing up. The tables were packed, families laughing over plates of ribs, elders swapping stories, kids sneaking extra cornbread. A local jazz trio played in the corner, their saxophone weaving through the chatter like a heartbeat. Nia moved between tables, serving, smiling, her scar catching the light like a badge of honor. She wasn't hiding anymore. Not from the stairs, not from her past, not from herself. Keisha, in a bright yellow dress that screamed her personality, was working the room like a pro, passing out menus and cracking jokes. "Y'all better save room for Nia's cobbler," she called, winking at a table of regulars. "It's so good. It'll make you propose to your fork." The crowd laughed, and Nia shook her head, her heart full. Jaden was there too, his hoodie swapped for a button-up, his grin wider than the Chicago River. He'd been clean since the last graffiti bust, channeling his art into the restaurant's murals. "Sis, this place is dope," he said, stealing a wing from a passing tray. "You're like the Queen of Englewood now." "Queen of dishes, maybe," Nia shot back, nudging him. "Go help Trey with the drinks, Your Majesty." Trey was behind the bar, pouring sweet tea and cracking open beers, his easy charm keeping the vibe light. He'd been a rock these past months, helping Nia navigate permits and suppliers. But his feelings for her still lingered in the air, unspoken, but heavy. She caught his eye, and he gave her a nod, like he knew she was carrying more than plates tonight. The weight of the last few months pressed against her. Marcus Kane's investigation, Lillian Brooks' threat, Evan's absence. The news had broken weeks ago. Kane was indicted for fraud, his real estate empire crumbling after Evan tipped off the feds with evidence of his shady deals. The articles stopped targeting Nia, and Mama Ruth kept soul food haven, but Lillian's court documents still haunted her, a reminder that Evan's world came with a price. He'd stayed away since the cookout, respecting her space, but his notebook sat on her counter, its peach pie recipe dog-eared from her experiments. She hadn't seen him, but she felt him, in the margins of those recipes, in the note he'd left. "You're stronger than you think. Keep burning." As the night hummed along, Nia stepped into the kitchen to check the grill, the sizzle of catfish grounding her. She was flipping a batch when Keisha burst in, her eyes wide. "Nia, you got a visitor, and I ain't talking about no regular." Nia's stomach flipped. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped out, only to freeze. Lillian Brooks stood by the door, her pearls gleaming, her expression unreadable. The jazz trio faltered for a second, and the room hushed, every eye on the woman who didn't belong. Nia's scar burned, but she straightened, walking over with her chin high. "Mrs. Brooks," she said, her voice steady. "Didn't expect you in Englewood. You here for the cobbler?" Lillian's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "I'm here to talk, Nia. Alone, if you don't mind." Nia's heart raced, but she nodded, leading Lillian to a small office in the back. The older woman sat, her posture rigid, and pulled an envelope from her purse. Nia braced herself, expecting another threat, but Lillian's voice was softer than she'd imagined. "I owe you an apology," she said, sliding the envelope across the desk. "I misjudged you, and I hurt you. This is the court document I sent. I've withdrawn the lawsuit threat. It was a mistake." Nia blinked, caught off guard. She opened the envelope, finding the document marked void. "Why now?" she asked, her voice sharp. "You think you can buy me off with this, after everything?" "No," Lillian said, her eyes meeting Nia's. "I'm doing this because Evan won't let me forget you. He's been fighting for you, Nia, against Kane, against me, against his own past. I thought you were a liability. I was wrong. You're a force." Nia's throat tightened. "Where is he?" Why isn't he here telling me this himself? Lillian hesitated, then said, He's leaving tonight for Nairobi, a 2-year project, rebuilding communities displaced by corporate greed. He didn't want to burden you with his choice. Nia's chest ached, a mix of relief and loss she couldn't name. He's running, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. No, Lillian said. He's fighting for something bigger than himself, like you are. Nia didn't respond, her mind reeling. Lillian stood, leaving the envelope on the desk. Keep burning, Nia, she said, echoing Evan's note, and walked out, her heels clicking on the hardwood. The opening rolled on, the crowd oblivious to the storm in Nia's heart. She served, smiled, laughed, but Evan's absence was a shadow she couldn't shake. As the night peaked, Trey handed her a mic, his voice booming over the speakers. Y'all, let's hear it for the woman who made this happen. Nia Carter, the heart of fire and flavor. The crowd roared, clapping, whistling, their love a wave that nearly knocked her over. Nia took the mic, her hands trembling, her scar glinting under the lights. Englewood, y'all are my family, she said, her voice cracking. This scar, it's not my shame. It's my story. I got it saving my brother, fighting for what matters. And this place, this is for all of us. For every scar, every fight, every fire that keeps us going. We're still here, and we're burning bright. The room erupted, tears streaking down Keisha's face, Jaden whooping like a kid. Nia stepped down, her heart pounding, only to see him. Evan, standing by the door, his jacket dusted with snow, his gray eyes locked on her. The jazz trio hit a high note, and the world seemed to pause. He crossed the room, the crowd parting, and stopped in front of her. Nia, he said, his voice rough. I couldn't leave without seeing you. That speech, you're everything. Her throat closed, tears threatening. You're leaving, she said, the words heavy. Lillian told me. Nairobi, 2 years. He nodded, his jaw tight. I have to. It's my chance to fix what I broke, to build something real. But I'm not running from you, Nia. You're the reason I'm doing this. She laughed, bitter but soft. You got a funny way of showing it, Brooks. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple silver ring. No gem, just a word engraved inside. Fire. I didn't fall in love with your scar, he said, his voice low. I fell in love with you. The scar's just part of your story, and I want every page. But I know you don't need me to shine. You never did. Nia's breath hitched, her eyes on the ring. She wanted to say yes, to hold him, but Fire and Flavor was her home, Englewood her heart. I can't go with you, she said, tears spilling. This is my fight, Evan, right here. I know, he said, closing her fingers around the box. Keep this, not as a promise, but as a truth. You're my fire, Nia, wherever I am. He kissed her forehead, lingering for a moment, then turned and walked out into the snow. Nia stood frozen, the ring heavy in her hand, the crowd's cheers a distant hum. Keisha appeared, pulling her into a hug. Girl, you okay? She whispered. No, Nia said, but she smiled through the tears. But I will be. The night ended with laughter, music, and plates scraped clean. Nia locked up, the jazz fading, the murals glowing under the streetlights. She slipped the ring onto a chain around her neck, a quiet reminder, and stepped into the kitchen, ready for tomorrow. A year later, Fire and Flavor was a Chicago legend. Its tables booked weeks in advance, its walls lined with photos of Englewood's heroes. Nia had hired a young girl with a birthmark on her cheek, teaching her to cook, to shine. In this place, Nia told her, tapping her own scar, we don't hide, we burn. One evening, as the dinner rush slowed, a customer asked to see the chef. Nia stepped out, wiping her hands, only to stop short. Across the street, a new mural glowed under the streetlights. Her face, her scar a cascade of golden flames, Jaden's signature scrawled in the corner. Below it, a note in Evan's handwriting, mailed from Nairobi. I still see you every day. Nia's heart swelled, but she didn't cry. She smiled, tucking the note into her apron, and went back to her kitchen, where the fire never went out. Keisha, leaning on the counter, caught her grin and laughed. What's that look, girl? Your man sending love letters from Africa? Something like that, Nia said, tossing a dish towel at her. Now get back to work, or I'll make you scrub the grill. Keisha cackled, and the restaurant hummed, a beacon of light in Englewood's heart. Nia didn't need Evan to feel whole. But the ring on her chain, the mural across the street, they were sparks in a fire she'd built herself. And that was enough. Hey, y'all! Nia's journey lit a fire in our hearts, and we hope it did for you too. If her story of scars, strength, and soul food moved you, hit that subscribe button for soul-stirring stories. Drop a comment. Tell us how you've burned bright in your own life. Let's keep the flames going with more stories that spark the soul.